Hello and welcome to Phoenix Vision. I am here with my guest today, Ben Wilson. Hello, buddy. How you doing?
How are we doing? Long time no see. Good.
I know, indeed, it has been. Yeah, I'm good. I'm good, and all the better for seeing you, mate. So just as a kind of a preamble for this, I used to go and see Ben at the start of my personal training journey, and mate, I was just say like going to see you was like this really invaluable time of my week each week. It was like a real investment. I used to travel all the way from East London to Battersea to go and see you, and just like you were like really formulative for me in those in those early days of moving into training, and like your advice and guidance was just, yeah, like I say, invaluable. So I just want to start off with a massive thank you for that, mate.
Well, thanks. They were fun sessions. It was like obviously you're not a typical client. You were doing some crazy challenges as you do. You were sitting in lakes before it ever got popular. We get you your cold therapy. It was a good time.
Yeah. Oh yeah. That's it. I was doing all those crazy runs up and down hills and stuff when I was
You're
yeah.
running to the height of Everest in Bolton or something like that. I still tell people today it sounded the most depressing of all the runs. What was it? To go up a hill 40 times?
Mate, it was so depressing. Like literally, it was mate, it rained for the whole thing. I didn't actually finish the whole thing because my ankle gave way. But
And then
yeah,
before that, you went to Snowdonia and got hypothermia in some trial run, didn't you, or something like that? What was that one on Snowdon you did? You did something practice.
no, I was all good for hypothermia. As that they didn't let us get to the top because of bad weather.
That was it. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, man, good times. But yeah, like thank you so much. I think like one of the most useful bits of advice you gave me around that whole time was because I was very much in this mindset of just like must do more, must run 5 times a week, and like all of this. And you're like, no, just do like 2 long runs once every 2 weeks, and then recover. And that
Yeah.
completely changed my mindset around endurance training and what my body needed. Because like too much of it, and you smash yourself, right?
I think it's one of the problems, and you almost see it as like a test of your toughness. So you think, well, the reason I don't want to run today is because I'm weak, and I'll show myself. And as you say, what you need is recovery. Because if I think, see, this across the fitness industry now, the people aren't specific to what they're doing. You know what I mean? So, and if your event is 50 kilometers in a day, you don't need to do 10 on Monday, Tuesday, when, you have to do the big one and then recover. Otherwise, as you say, you get injured, well, you're not completing the challenge and all that training has gone to waste.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And it's also like not underestimating the body's need for like the healing and recovery, because it's if you're doing those long stuff, it's not like you're going to be over it in like a day or two. It's like the microfibers and the tissues. It needs a bit of time.
And also giving yourself time to do the rehab, isn't it? Because if you're going to do 40 kilometers running up a hill, just the repetitive stress in certain areas, especially if you're out of balance, if you work with clients now with balance, if they're out of balance and they run 20 kilometers, that's a lot of damage that can be done.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'm just going to give you a bit of an intro, mate. Yeah, Ben is a personal trainer and author of Rugby Fitness Training, a 12-month conditioning program. Change Your Thinking, Change Your Shape, which I've read and is fantastic. Highly recommend that book. And his new book, which we're going to chat about today, The Grand Unified Theory of Weight Loss.
There
So
it is. Look at it. Take a look.
yeah, I love this title. It's kind of like yes, this is it. The formula is here. This is such a good title. I love it. So like yeah, but Ben's appeared on various different TV shows: BBC Breakfast Show, Channel 5 News, and CNN. He's gone through many different iterations of his own physical development, going through pro bodybuilding, and is a samba enthusiast, so a man of many talents. And yeah, I used to go to him and work in my early days of PTs, as we just spoke about. So yeah,
Thanks for having me. Good to chat. Good to connect.
right, absolutely. And this is great because it's been a couple of years since we chatted. So yeah, I'm really enjoying just connecting with you again in the short time that we've been speaking. So yeah, mate. I guess what if we kick off? Like, would you be up for sharing your story of how you got into working to help people with their health and fitness?
Well, I've been a personal trainer since 2002. I started in the fitness industry, so quite a couple of decades now. I was always good at school, in sport, always good at sport in school. And then I wanted to, when I was 18, study sports science. But my parents, being wise, were like, "No, you shouldn't study sports science. You need to do a real subject." And I'm like, "Okay." Then they got the headmaster to say, "No, Ben, you need to do a real subject. So okay, fine. So I went to university, did a degree in chemistry, which I don't regret now, but obviously I wasn't motivated, so I got through it. And then after I come out, I started, got a job in a chemistry plan, got normal jobs. But basically, it was like soul destroying. It's like, this isn't me sitting in an office. Like, I remember being a Halifax credit card, and what the HBOS they are now, and they were celebrating getting £1 billion of credit on their debt, on their books. And I'm like, this isn't me, So then on a weekend, I was reading a book from a library. At the end of it, it said, this book is for sports science degree courses. And I thought, well, if I'm reading this for fun on a weekend, I should surely do something around fitness or something. So then I retrained to become a personal trainer. So back in 2001, did a 3-month course, and then that was it. I never looked back because, it was really what was in my heart. Passion was helping people to get fit. And then I was in the industry, and then it sort of changed over the years because you start out and it's all about exercise, fitness. Let's go. Let's just get the pro. And then before it doesn't take you too long to realize, people trying to get in shape, that they need to know something about food. So then you start studying more about food. And then, of course, you do that and you go deeper into the food route, especially when you work with health, get more like clinical nutrition that I was studying. But then at some point you get to the thing, you're like, these plans are good, but no one's like following them. So then you're like, okay, it's down to the mindset of thing. And then obviously I've still stayed obviously as a personal trainer, but it's always been trying to build upon the different mental imageries. So, started studying stress management techniques. Obviously you're big into that yourself. I think I can't officially say the first personal trainer in the UK to be an emotional freedom technique practitioner as well. And I merged those together. And then it's just building upon that different technique. So there's no like one psychological technique. I know people love to say this cures everything. NLP is everything. This is everything. It's like, no, different places, different things. So you then continue to study. And then I think the big missed bit, which is how do you bring that all together to an actual practical form that you could work with somebody in the streets, in the park, in the gym, that's the hard bit. And that's ultimately what I've been trying to work on. And that's what the book's about, is trying to answer that question. What is stopping this person before you getting to their goals? And the answer to that is, for some people, very simple. For other people, a bit more complicated. But the fact you need to, cover everybody means there has to be lots of different factors that come into that process. So that's why I got to today. And I'm still here today, still working, still passionate, still, trying to improve the results you get with your people,
Yeah, awesome, man, awesome. I would really love to dive into the psychology of things because, often it's not the most complex of things that people need to do to get into shape, but it's the behavior change aspect of like why people are holding themselves back and maybe sabotaging themselves, and and the whole motivational aspect. It's mostly psychology, as you say. So like, I reckon. Would you be able to give like an overall kind of expose of the grand unified theory of weight loss as a concept, and then I'd love to dial down and get more into the specifics of the different areas of it, like sort of based around psychology and motivation, and you got like a number of like really great topics in the book. So yeah, what is the grand unified theory of weight loss, brother?
Yeah, I wish I could get it down to a 140 character tweet, but I can't. But we'll get it done. Brief overviews. So the whole point, the answer is what's stopping any one person getting to any one goal around body transformation. It's called weight loss, but call it body transformation. And it's a series of steps that every one person needs to get there. Do you know what I'm saying? So if you take a normal person off the street, they want to be a professional bodybuilder. Okay, most people don't, 0.1%, 0%. And then you're thinking, well, what's stopping that person getting there? And there's different factors, different influences that we need to look at. So the one that gets a lot of attention, or most fitness professionals, they're looking at the plans of action, the knowledge. Okay, what should I eat? What should I exercise? Obviously, that is part of the process, but it's only one part. Then you've got the motivation side of things. Well, are they motivated to do it? How strong is that emotion? Like a lot of people who struggle with getting in shape, they don't have an image that evokes emotion around getting to their goal. Or worse still, they have an image, but actually it's giving them a negative reason. As you said earlier on, it's not safe to go that way. Or some people, they've got a strong image, but it's like 17th on the list. The kids are in front of it, my work's in front of it, my partner's in front of it, the TV, it's down the list in that sense. So motivation is definitely an issue. And the second side of that is not just the motivation of the goal, but also the motivation around the tasks, because getting in shape is an interesting one. You can actually get in shape by mistake. If I happen to say love eating vegetables, love running, and love the feeling of not fasting, for example, there's a good chance you're going to get lean without even trying, because you're doing all the right things. Of course, most of us, love to sit there, watch telly, not move, and all the opposite sort of things. So it's that trade-off between enjoying the task. Some people are motivated, but they don't want to do the tasks. They don't like it. They don't like the feeling of exercise. And sometimes that might be because they've been absolutely hammered by their PE teacher 10 years before, and that's what they think exercise should be around. So you've got the motivation, you've got the plans, you've also got your base, like habitual behaviors, your neural connections. So too much is put on motivation in general, because the only reason you need motivation is to stop you doing something you naturally want to do. So we've got to talk about what you naturally want to do. So like someone like myself, I'm not drunk since say 2008. I was last drunk. I'm in a pub and people are like, "Oh, you're such great willpower," and I'm like, "No willpower. I've got no desire to drink. I'm just stood here like I am at home." So you have to get people in their baselines to doing a lot of stuff correctly. So, especially if you want to do a huge transformation, if I want to go from literally never exercise to, as I said earlier on, a bodybuilder. Well, every bodybuilder on the planet is training 6 times a week in the gym. They live in there. They love it. So if you're scared of exercising, you can't motivate yourself to get there. It's impossible. But you can train yourself. So more and more of those habits become natural. So that's the process. And it's the same with food. You probably trained yourself to finish the plate. We've been shouted at since kids, finish the plate, wasting food. That's not helpful in a game of fat loss, because what if I am full, but my plate's not finished? You will literally push yourself through to finish it. And this is a big problem for a lot of people. So the point is, you have to train these neural connections. Otherwise, it's always going to be a battle and you'll never quite win it. So that's another area that's part of this, theory. Then we've got another one, which is stress, which you touched on before. So you know what to do, you know how to do it. You're not doing it. Why aren't you doing it? Well, because I'm in a bad mood. I'm stressed. And it's looking at, do I have techniques to handle that? Do I have ways to reduce it longer term? So a coping technique, obviously, if every time I get stressed, I go for a run, well, that's an absolute victory, because of course you are now, burning 500 calories instead of eating 1,000. But that's just a coping one, because I might be stressed again tomorrow, and you can't keep exercising every 2 hours that you're stressed. So then it's looking at those techniques. That's how I got into emotional freedom technique, which is, people don't know, it's tapping and it's using certain affirmations and thoughts around it. It's why, mindfulness is so big, meditation's so big, and people need to have something as trick up their sleeve. So the food isn't, if I'm out of 10 stress events in a week, if I eat all 10 times, that might mess up my results. But if I get it down to say 5 out of 10, that might be enough to nudge you over the edge in that sense. And then the very final element, in the theory, is that your whole identity. So your fitness identity is part of you. So how do you see yourself as a person? This also includes who is around you, because we put too much on motivation as me. So let me just grill my way through it. Half of it's what's around you. So if I took any person and put them in a house of Olympic athletes training for the games, they're going to move more, they're going to eat better, because of who is around them. And sometimes of mine was not necessarily because you can't just get rid of all your family, obviously. It's sometimes in your head. Who do you compare yourself to? Who do you get contact? And now with online, you can actually get access to people who you could never have got access before. 30 years ago, it's whoever's in your village, and they don't want to talk to you. So it's a much better place to be. But your environment is a big influence, and that links into your identity and how you see yourself. And of course, identity doesn't just change like that. I think people just think, right, I'm now going to see myself as fit. It's like, no, identity comes through a process. And the more of those and some has to involve other people. I think people think you can't just do everything on your own. Back to the bodybuilder example, all bodybuilders have coaches or train in packs with other people. Like, it's just the way they do it. It makes sense, doesn't it? If I'm into whatever I'm into motorcycles, I'm probably following a motorcycle website, and I go to a motorcycle club, I go to motorcycle rallies. That's the environment making me a motorcycle head, and it's the same with fitness. So it's how you put that in place. And again, the final element of this sort of cycle, the gradient by theory, is the duration it takes to get there. Because if I need to lose 50 kilograms, you can't get there in 2 months. It's going to take 2 years, 3 years. And the same with changing who you are and those neural patterns I said before. There is a certain element of repetitions that you need to do it. Because I've competed in 5 bodybuilding shows, and people are like, "Oh, I'd love to follow that diet for a day." And I'm like, well, you've probably already done harder. The fact is, I'm going to start off in a good place, and I'm going to do 150 days, and none of those individual days are that brutally hard compared to what other people do. Especially now in January, people are doing stuff that I couldn't follow. But it's the duration, the consistency, and that's the sort of element. So then the idea is you put them into place necessary for your goal. I think it's important to understand The reason fitness is quite difficult is you've got different people giving it different advice. So a lot of the fitness influence comes from bodybuilders who are got the most muscle, the least body fat, and are the most obsessed. So they're eating 6 times a day. But if you know any bodybuilders, they don't have a social life. None of them drink. They all hang out with other bodybuilders. Like, that's their life. That's not a normal human, normal person in society. So the point being, you don't need to copy their techniques unless you are trying to become one of those. Then it's trying to get the appropriate level of advice for people so they can actually get to their results. And a lot of problems come from that dominating the industry, which is fine, but it's just been misrepresented in. And of course, the weight loss industry is all full of placebos, scams, and all that sort of stuff that can knock people apart. So in a nutshell, that is the unified theory. So those different areas are coming together to allow change. And some people need to do more of one area than the other. Like a lot of people know exactly what to do. They're just too stressed. So we don't need to then sit you down on a lecture, teach you about organic food. Like, you know what to do. Like, we need to de-stress you. What can we do in your week to de-stress? And then all of a sudden you might find, wow, all of a sudden I can follow this results, and so forth. You know what I'm saying? So that's how the approach works. So it's, what does one person need? You have to have these influencing areas. Maybe that this person you're working with has already got 4 of them sorted. Well, then that's fine. Do you know what I'm saying? So it's that process. And the final element is just the dynamics around change itself. So, we've heard like contemplation, pre-contemplation. That's an element of change. A lot of people aren't even thinking about changing. A lot of people, when they think about change, don't even think it's possible. It's like saying, right, should we make £1 billion company? You're like, I don't know, I haven't got a job, I'm unemployed. But some people, it's just too big a step. So a lot of people now, we're living in an era where they don't believe weight loss is possible. They don't believe body transformation is possible. The good thing is in this industry is it's 100% possible if you follow the right steps. So that's definitely a part. And within that is like the coaching process, which links back to what I said earlier on about a lot of times you can't do this on your own. Okay, yes, physiologically you can, but the change is hard. You know this, you're a coach yourself. Sometimes you just need that framework, that support to be able to say, do this. Or sometimes if you're motivated, they're like, well, we're working together. Like, it's not that you're motivated, it's you're too motivated because you want to run up that hill 100 times. You're like, mate, you need to do it 10 and then go have a rest for 2 days. Sometimes you just can't do that yourself because it's hard to self-coach. You know what I'm saying? So that's a brief sum up. Don't know how long that was. Was that brief enough? Who knows? I've got that.
Oh man, there's so much golden stuff in there. Thank you. Yeah, I guess like what a few things really resonated there, and what you said towards the end there about having the belief system that actually the change is possible. Because I recently recorded a podcast on transforming pain, because a lot of time people kind of start giving up hope and they don't believe that kind of getting out of pain is possible. And I'm inherently, I think that I also would love to touch on this kind of like negative image that people can have of themselves, which might be holding them back, because inherently someone would want to change their body and change their lives because they are often trying to move away from some form of pain and into some form of pleasure. But then I guess they come up to the prospect of doing the work and also the prospect of having to change, which is also potentially a perceived pain of the future. So then I imagine they get kind of like locked between these two poles of pain, the pain of being where they are versus the pain of what they'll need to do to overcome and get the pleasure. And I guess this is where like a lot of people get stuck. What was your kind of feelings on that
definitely on that one thing just to point out, I think as therapists, trainers, and so forth, I think we get people slightly further down the path than we realize, because obviously if they phoned you up, called you up, that's quite a big hurdle. So already they've got a bit more motion than maybe the average person in the street. Somebody might read my book, they're a bit further back at that stage. It's quite scary to phone a trainer, contact a trainer, even though it's probably going to be the best thing that you're going to do. In regards to that, obviously to get around a negative thing, the general way to advise it is you need to find out the pain that you've got today. So this is where the Dickens patterns in NLP comes from. So if I'm sat here thinking, oh, it's a bit hard to go to the gym. Oh, Love Island started, let me watch it. That's not going to get you going there. But all of a sudden, if you start fast forwarding, okay, what are the consequences of me not going to the gym today? You're like, well, I know I'll feel worse tomorrow. What is it? Let me fast forward. You have to create that pain. You can see the consequences in the future. And this is obviously what they try to do with smoking, where they put in the lungs on the ill lungs on the photograph. But the problem is people just dismiss it. They're like, the pain of the craving now is much greater than that future time pain. But that's what you have to do. You have to start tuning into some of the consequences of not getting there. But it does depend on as you say, the situation. Because for a lot of people, the reason they don't want to move is they've not moved for 20 years. So as you said earlier on, they don't even think it's within them. And then they watch some crazy fitness bloke killing it, and then they don't want to do that. Of course, and then they turn on The Biggest Loser, and they've got somebody who's weighing 30 stone, 300 pounds, trying to climb a tree, and they're like, see, I knew fitness was rubbish. Yet me and you know, just walk up, just go for a walk. That's the next step. You know, so I think if you take very small steps and you just ask yourself, what am I prepared to do? That's how you can get there too. Very gentle steps. Because the reality of getting in shape, it's not that difficult. The difficulty is doing repetitive days, enough days over time. So, you know, because people have these objections that you just need to get around. So, I don't want to give up my favorite food. Well, don't. Why do you eat half as much? They're like, oh, didn't think of that. You know what I mean? Like, it's that sort of thing. So we need to find some fire to fight that. So if it's just, you know, general malaise, so it's like different to saying, you know, some people have like more deeper trauma around being in shape. Say, like the last time you're in shape, something bad happened, you know, or that needs to come slightly different. That's more down the stress management trauma route. I would use EFT. Other people might use therapy. There's different techniques for that. But if it's the more general, low level, oh, the gym's a bit horrible, that sort of thing, then it's two things. What am I prepared to do? And let me think about some of the consequences of if I don't make this change. Now, some people are obviously more G'd up by the positives. Oh, wouldn't I look good on holiday? But the nature of humans, we do a bit better when we're, you know, last minute. The homework's got to be in tomorrow. Shit, and that's you know what I mean. Like it's more that. So in health and fitness, you have to try and solidify that, and that happens by just thinking about it. Now, of course, most people don't think about it, so you just need to ask that question. You know, if I do nothing now, or things get slightly worse, where am I going to be in 6 months? 12 months. I often like to use a landmark. So, you know, where are you going to be on your next landmark birthday? Well, it's a year and a half away. I'll be 50. Oh, my Lord. Imagine, you know, you're beginning to get a bit of pain. If there's none of those things, then it's often about what does it represent. So sometimes people can't get motivation, but you can get it in representation because some people are like, especially when I do my bodybuilding shows, like, what's the point? I'm like, well, there's no point, is there? Why do people climb mountains? Why did you run up that Bolton Hill 25 times? You know, like it's a challenge. The point is, it means something to me, and you can do the same about getting in shape. You can do the same about, you know, not giving up that food or going to the gym. It's not necessarily about the end result. It's about what could it mean? So there's different ways to get motivation there. Final point to note is some people aren't motivated by changing their body, but they're motivated by their health. Some people are motivated by what this means as a parent. Some people, you know, like there's different things. Some people are motivated by pure competition of what their sister's doing. It's like motivation is very individual to you. It can change over time, but you just need to tune into what fires you up or could fire you up right now. And there's a host of things, and something will. I think people kid themselves thinking that nothing will. Something will. You just got to sort of tune into that. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, it kind of brings up motivation versus inspiration. Like I kind of see like motivation as like an external factor, such as like I don't know, you see fit body on the TV and you think, oh, I want that, or the doctor might be saying like, no, you need to lose some weight because you know you're on the cusp of diabetes. You know, this is like an external force, some sort of influence on us that may be good to get us going, but then ultimately can be not as easy to sustain as something that comes from within, this fire that you speak of. So it's just like motivation versus inspiration. So it's just like being inspired to action from within, and you know, having a really compelling dream or goal to move towards, so that you know you want to get up in the morning, you want to do the work rather than. And I guess it's like kind of this push and pull between love and fear as well. Like fear is something that something will happen if I don't do this, the consequence. Whereas like the love is just like, oh well, if I do this, then I can have this, I can achieve this. So, what would your advice be on setting like a compelling goal or something to work towards? Because this is often an area that a lot of people, in my experience, find like a bit of difficulty with. Like they've got like an idea of where they want to get to, but often it's maybe not compelling enough to really kind of put them into this place of being really fired up. So yeah, what would your advice be around creating a compelling goal, mate?
Well, you definitely raise a good point, especially with the inspiration, because a lot of people, especially when they phone a trainer up, it's because something has happened. They've seen themselves in a photo and they're pissed, you know, or they couldn't fit in that dress, or they're like, I felt so heavy over Christmas. No, I've got to do something. You know, that sort of type of event happens. The problem is that will only inspire you or drive you for a bit. Say you got to lose 15 kilos. Once you lose 4 kilos, you feel pretty good. You're like, oh, life's all right. I'm feeling good. Do you still have the drive to get on the other end? This is why I say it's very important to be inspirational. And like I say, it's hard to you can't just this problem. You can't just say be inspired by this picture, which I show them a picture that inspires me. You have to try and find it within yourself. You know what I'm saying? And that could sometimes be just hanging out with someone who inspires you. Of course, that's quite hard. Sometimes looking at someone on Instagram, whatever it could be. But it's trying to find that inspiration. Now, I'm going to come back to what I said before. So many people are just surrounded by this "it can't happen, it's impossible" field. They don't even bother to look. You know, I think if people genuinely thought it was possible, and as you and I both know, it's genuinely possible, you can get where you want to go, it does change a lot of these things. So as far as finding that inspiration, I don't think it can happen on your own. That's what I would probably say. You need to be around something, not necessarily in person because you can't always get to person, but you need to have something that will take you up. So I don't know if you ever try different, obviously you're great for trying different things, you know, doing different experiences. You might just go down the climbing center and go, this is me. That's what happened when I started working in the gym. I'm like, this is the place to work. This, you know, like it inspired me, you know, and now I work in parks and it's still, well, in one environment, it's still inspiring. The point being is, you can only get to a certain level on your own. You know what I'm saying? As far as that deeper inspiration, wanting to become a different type of person. You're trying to describe here from, you know, sedentary to someone who's seen with all their friends super fit. That takes a process and so forth. But I still question as far as finding that goal in the short term, I'm trying to get people to tune into their feelings. The good thing when you work with someone is, on our side is, you know, people feel better when they eat better. You know, people better when they exercise appropriately. People feel better when they use stress techniques. So you just need to say, do you feel better when you do that? And then like, yeah, I do feel a bit better actually. You know, and you follow that pathway. The power of that feeling of inspiration you talk about is a feeling from within. You know, so it links into the mindfulness. If you can tune people into that, it sort of drives them in the right direction. It makes those sort of decisions. But it's not easy to imprint a goal on someone. This is, I think, what a lot of fitness people struggle with, because I might be inspired to have big biceps, but the person doesn't. I don't care. I've got 2 kids. I don't care about biceps. I'm married. What are you on about? You know, it's so you've got to try and find within them. But at the same time, everybody is motivated. If somebody who's totally not motivated, so in the book I call these sleepers, they're not even talking to you about this. You know, they're not even contemplating. They don't even think it's you. So as I say, I think people who might watch this, it's already a slightly biased, you know, audit. Like a lot of my clients are like, oh, I'm not that fit. And I'm like, you realize this bubble in London is fitter. If you go to, obviously I'm from North Wales, if you go to North Wales, people drive everywhere. They don't exercise so much. You know, in the general communities, I think people get mistaken for people you see inside of a bubble. People, when I go to the gym, I'm like, why is every guy in the gym bigger than me? And of course, I'm just looking at like 6, 7 blokes, but you know what I mean? It feels like everyone's bigger than you. But you're not seeing the average person. The average person is not even thinking about getting in shape. They give a token effort in January. They don't believe it's possible, you know. So it's slightly about what these sort of things in. So for those people, I'm trying to find that enjoyment. They'll feel better after a walk. They'll feel better after a little change for their food, and that's sort of starting that sort of journey. Final thing to know on that. Remember, some people don't see images. I still can't get my head around it. Kind of visual person. Some people do not see images. So some of those traditional goal setting things won't work. You know, picture this, picture that. They're like, what are you on about? I just hear and feel. And you're like, oh, I don't get it. And if you are, like I am, you won't really get that. So it's different. It's not as easy as you think just to become inspired. I also question how necessary it is to become totally inspired. Like, remember, think like an Olympic athlete. They have got a goal they think about every second of the day. Anybody who's done a body fitness show, goal they think about every second of the day. If you sign up for a marathon, because a good fitness challenge should scare you enough and inspire you enough to get you going. It inspires you enough to sign up, and you've obviously done lots of these challenges yourself. It scares you enough that it makes you think, hey, I better do the training, otherwise something's going to go wrong. I'm not going to finish. You know, so that's the sort of process you've got to try and find, is that inspiration and taking those sort of steps. Is it right?
Yeah, amazing, mate. Thank you for that. Yeah, I think it's you know, the other difficulty that people face in terms of like blocking factors in their psychology, such as self sabotage and, you know, like lack of motivation and inspiration, can also kind of twin in quite and walk hand in hand with self sabotage as well. As well as like avoidance as well, because, you know, everyone knows that, you know, we should be doing this and we should be doing that, but it's like, I'm going to avoid what I know I should do because it will mean that I need to take responsibility for it and take responsibility for myself. So what would your thoughts be on some of the psychological blocking factors that can get in the way of someone's weight loss or fitness efforts, bud?
I think the best way to address it is to like meet it at the practical steps level. And it's almost like, I think the way it's like, I always feel like I'm playing a game of chess with my with my clients. I'm playing against their demotivated side, but I'm also on their motivated side team. So you're sort of arguing against yourself. Well, imagine trying to convince a 4-year-old that they need to get off the edge of the sofa or something. It's like, it's that sort of negotiated process. So they'll throw up some small objections. Again, they might be representing the bigger fear behind, and you can just get around that, because a lot of people's main objections, it's like, if you can click your fingers, most people are going to take, I want to look like this, not even going to look the same, but they're going to just say, fine, that's it. It's like, say, depend, you want 10 million pounds, like, all right. The question is, am I prepared to do the work that it takes? Maybe, as you say, I'm scared and so forth. But most people are doing the little steps wrong. Most people are banning all the foods they like. You know what I'm saying? Or the flip side of this is they haven't taken the time to train themselves, to retrain their neural connections. And this is what a lot of this comes back to. So with self-sabotage, you don't quite know, are they actually sabotaging it because it's not safe to get there? My experience is a huge percentage of that are sabotaging it not because of that, but because they don't like doing the steps in between. So the problem is, we are very much, we like trained monkeys, trained dogs, whatever you like to look at. If you have a dog and you walk it at 11 a.m. and give it a biscuit at 3 p.m., 1 week of doing that, the dog is there wagging its tail at 11 for walks, and it's there at 3 for a biscuit. And we as humans are very similar. We've trained ourselves to eat all day. This first sign of hunger, oh my God, it's hungry, I've got to grab something. You can untrain a lot of these things. That comes back to your neural programming, because I think most people have just got, general society today is designed to make you move less and eat more. That's just what happens. The foods are tastier. They've got more calories in them. Every invention is to stop you doing it. It was only 5 years ago, it was a bit rarer to get delivered food, and now more people get delivered food than they go shopping. It's like, that's what the modern world is sort of doing. Obviously, lockdown means people are spending somewhere from 1 day to 5 days a week at home now. There goes your commute. That was movement lost. So it's trying to get some of these little steps back. If you've not commuted for years, you've lost the ability to walk properly. So it's like trying to retrain these sort of things back. So self-sabotage is a difficult one, because it's merged in with, like I say, some of it's the fear you talked about, the deeper not feeling safe. A lot of it's about the day-to-day steps. A lot of it, which obviously comes back to the theory, there's different factors, is your habitual patterns are off. And then you can't take out the stress side of things. What does self-sabotage actually mean? Once every 2 months, you have a family meetup, and the family meetup messes you up for 2 weeks mentally. Well, I don't think that's self-sabotage. That is the result of your stress that happens around the family. And of course, the solution isn't to go on the treadmill for an hour. The solution is to remodel how you handle those stressful situations so that it doesn't affect the food and exercise so much. And like I say, we are in a good place in health and fitness goals, because you don't just solve the problems of stress in your life. We need to make sure they're directed so that you do something more positive with them for your body, rather than a negative channel. So,
yeah, absolutely. And to touch on stress, I mean, we live in this like really busy, fast-paced world, especially like London. Like, damn, like when I moved out of London, I felt my nervous system over 2 weeks just going, yeah, and just relax, man. It was like crazy. I was like, wow, that's actually the effect that living in the city is having on me, because I literally felt myself deload. And I see this challenge a lot with my clients. Like, similar story in that, they're running 10 to the nines at all times, rushing around, not have any time for themselves. Then they've got to try and run a family. They've got to run a house as well. They're extremely stressed, and like this takes them away from like the ability to actually effectively spend the time to do things for themselves that will help to deload them. So it's kind of like this challenge that feeds itself, really. And like I find that there's a big link between kind of people's perception of time as well. I've not got any time for this, I've not got time for that, and then ironically, it's just like the perception of time drives the adrenal glands, which makes you have less time, because you're running fast. When you're running faster, you have less time, as a perception. So yeah, like since this is like a really tricky issue that like loads of people face, what could some of your advice be around people who are like really stressed, maybe overwhelmed, have too much on, and time is the struggle?
Definitely. Well, I think you've got to learn. A stressed person needs to learn some technique to try and help them out. You know what I'm saying? Because right now, if I've got no technique, what you're going to do is you'll try and change how you feel. The easiest way to change how you feel is to eat some food, or you stuff yourself. That's what people do. You know what I'm saying? So you need to try and there's no right or wrong technique. So obviously meditation is great. If the stress you've got is high thoughts, you're thinking thought, then a quick meditative technique, it can be very good. That could be, there's so many meditative apps out there. Now, a lot of people don't like meditation. The main thing I'd say about all stress coping techniques is you've got to put some time in to learn it, because you can't just do 5 minutes of meditation and go, no, didn't work for me. Do 5 minutes of this, didn't work for me. It's like, you've got to put in an hour or two, but not much. It doesn't take much, because everyone is motivated at some point. And obviously the perception of time is great. I remember here being stressed, writing the book or something, and I got no time to cook, and literally sat here for 4 hours. I could have gone in there, put something in the oven. Like, it's a perception, as you say. It's not the sort of thing here. So I think people need to learn how to use a technique that works for them, and there is no right or wrong. If you come to me, I'm a fan of emotional freedom technique, I'd probably push you that way. But I try to get people to learn, experiment with at least a few. So the main ones, you've got breathing techniques. So just anything that's changing your breathing has the potential to change how you feel. Obviously meditation itself, and there's different types of meditation. You could sing, say a mantra. You could just do a more mindfulness meditation. I like chakra meditations, where you open the chakras, feeling the energy. Again, what resonates, what doesn't. Some people prefer journaling. You can journal, and obviously that allows you to express your thoughts. You don't have to keep the journal. You can burn it straight afterwards, delete the phone thing. Again, a way to get it out. Other people, like I say, I prefer emotional freedom technique, which is when you're here going through the stress. And like I say, so you need a technique. As far as time goes, you're trying to just obviously compound time together, isn't it? So, if I can learn to walk, if I got kids I got to play with, well, could they go on a bike and I go for a walk? That's your Saturday morning. That's more productive in that sense. But I don't think it takes, what I found experience-wise, stress-wise, it doesn't take that much time to do. And a lot of people are caught up in these things where they think more working is more productive working. And if you were to monitor and look at all the productivity books, it's about, you've got maybe 3 to 4 hours of brutally efficient work in you a day, maybe 2 or 3 are pretty rubbish, and then you're done. You know what I'm saying? So like, a lot of people are working long hours. So then in those cases, it's about, okay, how can do I really need to work 9 hours when I'm only, the last 2 hours I'm doing like half an hour's work? It's prioritizing that thing. Now, some people don't want to do that, they're resistant, but you get everybody at some point in a year has enough energy to put some time into stuff. And this is what this book's about, is that if I've got you in January, and anytime someone signs up, you've got them there. You've got them. So my goal is, if we do stuff in this motivated period that changes who you are, then when you lose your motivation in 2 months, when you're not working with me in 6 months, who are you then? If you're a different person, then we've done the job. We've got a chance of keeping those results going. If you're the same person, because I just made you work harder, nothing much changed. So I'm saying is, even though some people might not have time now, for the next month, say I'm an accountant, you're not going to have time right now, you're an accountant. It's January the 31st, no one's filled in the tax form. But of course, in April, you might have time to then, well, let me study April, meditation this month. Let me go to a workshop. And then maybe if you've got that as a skill, then long term it's very different. You know what I'm saying? But I don't think time's an issue for most people, because especially like in body shape, changing body shape, body fat, most people are not trying to be bodybuilders. And even if you want to be a bodybuilder, what do you need? An hour, 4, 5 times a week? If that's your goal, that's not as much as people think it is. If you just want to lose body fat, it's not really about that much time. You know what I'm saying? I don't think you need as much time as people think in those regards. But it's the mind that's busy, which means there's no time. If your mind's too busy, you haven't got 1 minute spare, but you end up watching telly for half an hour. So then you're like, interesting.
Yeah. So actually, the stress reduction helps you to orientate your behavior differently, so that you can take the right action to do what you need to do, as well as I know that there's this biochemical relationship between stress and the system, and a stressed out system can actually hold on to weight because of the various different biochemical reactions that are happening within it. So this is where like mental management is like going to be so important for any kind of weight loss or health aspiration, because there is this connection between how we're internalizing and feeling our emotions and how our body then expresses that. Which I think we were chatting about before, like a lot of people maybe might not be so aware that there's actually this very strong mental, emotional, physical connection within the body. So yeah, what would your thoughts be on how how our thoughts and emotions are influencing our shape? Obviously, we've just touched on the massive one, but in terms of stress. But what else could you say about this connection between emotions and the body?
It's definitely an interesting one. I like to separate, as far as stress goes, into 2 things: coping techniques and then reduction techniques. I think they are different. So a coping technique is learning to exercise when I'm stressed instead of eating healthier foods instead of worse foods, getting enough sleep, because we process emotions during the dream phase of sleep. So if you only sleep for 4 hours, you're probably not going to access that much. Therefore, you're not able to handle that amount of stress in the same way. But on the flip side of that, and same with like a quick 5-minute meditation, that might make me a bit more calm. But that's not the same as reduction. So reduction is, how do I fundamentally change that thought? So when I think about my boss at work, I don't want to go in there and punch him. Do you know what I'm saying? When I think about him, I just feel, well, he's a bit of a whatever. I don't feel that rage within me. That's a reduction technique. So you're physically different afterwards. And I think you have to do that stuff as you go along. But if you get good at one of those techniques, then it really is powerful. So you work on this yourself, because people still don't accept that emotions show up in a physical sense. But basically, what is an emotion? It's a thought and a physical sensation. If you haven't got the physical sensation, it's not an emotion. It's just a thought. So we all accept, if we're nervous, you're going to feel it in the stomach. I feel nervous, and when you feel angry, probably feel hot here with some tension maybe here. You feel it in the body, and it's the same for emotions. And that's why I was always a big fan of 5 rhythms dancing, which is free movement. So the idea of 5 rhythms dances, and they've done great studies. They've shown that yoga, 5 rhythms dance, is getting the same results with trauma as talk therapies. Because what happens is, you're meant to go in there, just move the body however you want to move it. And then if that accesses those stiff areas, if it releases that area, you will therefore feel different. And you talk about yourself, obviously, when you're doing this with, anatomy lines and trains. The problem is, when you've got a stiff muscle that's evoking emotion, it's unlikely to be in the calf muscles that you stretch every time before you go for a run. But what if it's in the muscle in my voice box? What if it's in my diaphragm? You're probably not going to stretch those by doing typical exercises that people do. You know what I'm saying? But the point is, if you do get those, you can get a fundamental shift in how you feel on an emotional sense. So as far as the emotions affecting the body, like I say, there are lots of things that can affect the body, as we talk about, but I think it's always more to come back to, we're still a biochemical organism. So you'll see in people's metabolic rate change for all sorts of different reasons. So I take medication, you might, instead of burning 2,000 calories a day, you now burn 1,600. Well, it's now harder to lose body fat. Same with emotion stress. It could be, as you say, the system's suppressed, you're burning less calories. But I think it's important to remember, the base of this, you could always eat less food and still get there, which is why people, I know there's lots of theories around weight loss, but the truth of the matter is, if there's a famine, everyone's going to lose weight. There's just no way around it. Do you know what I'm saying? It's there's zero way around it. Now, of course, we're not living in a enclosed environment. We're in a free food environment. There's more food than there's ever been before, and it's not going anywhere. So, it's a moot point. But the point is, it's important to remember, it can happen, but of course, it makes it a bit harder. And of course, if you're down, your willpower is less. So these are the real factors that sort of come in that sense. So again, it's what you make of it, because some people, and you see this obviously in trauma and treatment and stuff, it's how you respond to a trauma. It's it could inspire you on and push you on to do the right task. Remember, all we need to do in a transformation thing is to direct whatever you're feeling, experiencing, to do the task, which is doing the appropriate exercise, moving enough, eating the right amount, not too much if it's about weight loss, and then it comes out that way. So it's how you direct it. So I know there's a movement there. You have to see some of the binge eating books and stuff, that you have to get rid of all your emotions stuff. It's no, you don't have to get rid of the emotions. You don't have to become, let's say, a mess in life to perfect in life. You just need to stop the outlet being the food and drink, and of course, and not exercising. If you channel it the other way around, and whenever you're in a bad mood, you now do some exercise, you can get there, much quicker and easier than having to go through 7 years of therapy and so forth. Now, of course, you could argue it's a good idea to treat the trauma, but it's not necessarily a prerequisite to make that change. Or put another way, if you observe the best people on the planet, shape-wise, you will not find they're all the best, happiest people in the world, nor the best human beings, nor the best role models, but they've directed it in a certain way. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely. That leads quite nicely into, I wanted to ask you about consistency. And because this is a key part of getting any kind of result, and I think people are doing the right kinds of things, but maybe, as you say, not for long enough. So it's my kind of feeling of it, having gone through challenges with myself, is it's we're dealing with this human mind that is can be so transient in nature. At the start of the day we feel great, something will happen, and then the world's caving in around lunchtime, and then at the end of the day we're feeling good again, and it's just we're constantly having to live with this what can sometimes be an erratic way of being, and this can have a massive effect on, and does have a massive effect on our behaviors, as well as our internalization of this emotion, as we're just talking about. So what could you say about consistency? Because also as well as having to deal with a mind and emotional system that can be different all of the time, we also have to deal with things like boredom. We have to deal with things like temptation. There's all of these extenuating factors that want to pull us away from achieving our goals. And like what you said about this modern world being kind of not really conducive for our health and fitness. So yeah, what could you say about consistency, mate?
Like I said, there is a lot of factors in consistency. Obviously, I think consistency basically always comes back to those neural programs. Because if you were naturally exercising every day because you've trained yourself to do it, it doesn't matter, because people who exercise every day are doing it in all their moods. What I'm saying? And this is definitely something I try and get with people around food, is that you've got to learn to disconnect from, as you say, that up and down of the feelings. What I'm saying? So, and the only way to do that is to structurally practice doing it. So you can say, right, I need to learn not to eat this afternoon. And you can't do that if you're demotivated. You can only do that when they've signed up and they're motivated. So, right, tomorrow afternoon, no snacking. And you're like, because what's happening is, as I said, if you eat, say you eat 5 times a day, your brain, if you monitor it, is getting a little signal saying, hey, I need something to happen here. And it feels uncomfortable not to act upon it. So on a bad day, you're never going to resist that. Give me the food. But on a good day, when you're motivated, you say, right, well, let me just sit through this. And it's uncomfortable. You're like, I need to do something. Because like, when I first gave up drinking, I went to the pub to watch Wales play rugby, and I drank 6 pints of water. And I thought, well, that's weird. I used to drink 6 pints of beer when I used to drink while watching the rugby match. So I thought, what if my hand is trained to do this during a rugby match? Went again, didn't drink anything, and that was the end. The connection was broken straight away. We see it was habitual. What you were sort of, my hand was feeling awkward. And we have lots of these subtle events to go on. So if we can break some of those during a motivated period, and it's very easy to break, you just have to do 1, 2, 3, 4 repetitions. That's about it. You are then not the same person. So then what happens is it disconnects you a little bit. So when you are down a bit, up a bit, you're not so necessarily going to be reacting straight to food. And as I said earlier on, like, a lot of people have a fear of hunger. They think, oh my God, I've got to address it. I really learned this first was when I did Ramadan. One of my clients was Muslim and he was starting Ramadan. I was like, what are the rules? This sounds fun. And I was like, I'll join you for the first week. So I did it the first week. This was like 7, 8. It was during June, July, when it was in the hot part of summer. It was 11 a.m. I was hungry. I was thirsty. I was like, how long have I got? And I'm like, oh, 10 hours. I'm like, oh, I might die. 15 minutes later, the hunger's gone, the thirst's gone. And I'm like, oh my Lord, this is a wave that this is not real. And it's the first time I really experienced that this hunger thing, it's not real. The correlation, how we think of hunger, is if I don't feed my hunger now, I'm going to have no energy in half an hour, I'll be dead, I might faint. And every hour I go without eating, I'll get hungrier. Now, twice I've done a 5-day fast where no food for 5 days. And that's not what happened. You're hungry for a bit on day 2, you're not hungry for 6 hours, then you're hungry. Then day 4, you feel epic. Like, it's not the correlation that you need. And people need to break that, because right now we're living in a thing where I've got to react to an impulse. And if I don't react, it's going to be problems. I'm going to be of no energy. I won't be able to do this. I won't be able to do that. Now, to some people, in defense of them, they are not very good at not eating. So what happens is, as humans, we're designed to live without eating. Because in the olden days, we lived in bushes. We might not get food for a day or so. Get over it, you're fine. So it's within us as a human. Now, you could easily have lost that, and obviously, if you've got real blood sugar issues, you probably have lost it. But 90, high percentage of people can retrain that in by gently beginning to train it in them. Of course, you've got to have the motivation. All the like neural connection experiments, changing your behavior patterns, you need to be motivated to try a task. So the point is, when you have someone who's motivated, that's when you have to do it. You can't do that in a demotivated period. But the point is, that's how you change it. So basically, at the end of the process, you've actually disconnected from your impulses, so they don't automatically lead to this, and then that should get your consistency up. One point, consistency, you don't need to be 100%. This is a big issue. Like, getting in shape is not that hard. You don't need to be 100% out of 100%. If you get results on 82% good, whatever you call that, go at 82.5. I'm happy with it. It's the pushing to the top that gets people in a lot of trouble. And when you understand that, and you can play with that 30%, 20% madness, whatever, and you're okay with that, consistency is nowhere near as hard. And this is where like the intuitive eating movement came from. Intuitive eating, they basically said, eat whatever you want. And people were like, surely not. If I can eat anything, I'll just eat the whole planet. And then when people truly let themselves eat what they want, they realized they didn't actually want to eat that much. They were like, oh yeah, I just wanted a bit of cake once or twice in a week, and that's enough. They stop because they're content, because there's no ban. The idea being in people's heads right now. If the government came on today and said, right, we're banning chocolate at 8 p.m. tonight, I've got my load of chocolate because I'm like, well, it'll be a band. I won't be around tomorrow. I may as well eat it. It's that, scarcity factor. People have this in their head because they're thinking, tomorrow I'm going to ban. That's it. Good food only. There goes the bad stuff. And that creates a bad cycle. And this is why intuitive eating got some good results in that sense. Obviously, the flip side to intuitive eating is if you're totally out of touch with hunger, control, eating, then saying eat how you want, it just doesn't work. You have to retrain that into people before they get to that sort of stage. So that's what I say about consistency. That sums it up.
Yeah, great. I mean, there's got a couple of things that come up there, and yeah, I guess it's because I've had this complaint from clients before about the if I don't eat, I'm going to be hungry, I'm going to be low on energy, and it really comes back to something quite primordial, really, in that it kind of taps into someone's survival instincts. But we're so out of calibration of how we are in our natural state, like you say, we can happily go for a day, 2 days without food, and actually we get an elevation in metabolism because the body goes into like hunt mode, because you got to find the food, so the body gives you more energy in the absence of food in order to gather that food. And the other thing is that this restriction thing. So it's just like it's extreme. So when we're in the extremities, this often isn't sustainable. B, we've got like this inner rebel. So it's just like when you start restricting things and saying that you can't have it, you can't. What's like if I was to say like, Ben, like you can't have ... What's your immediate, reaction to that? I didn't even say what, like you're right. You can't have tea for the next week. What's your immediate reaction? It's just like, no, like, screw you. I'm gonna go have a cup of tea.
Yeah, you would stock hoard it. You'd go get. If they were literally banning it, they would go and get. You would go and get loads for it or whatever. In that sense, you know what I'm saying. So it's that. I think it is getting to the extreme. It's that I'm never again is a very scary thing. I mean, infinites are very scary. I say, right, I'm going to reduce it this next week. That's a lot less, and a lot of this battle is the internal. And this is the whole thing with like getting in shape. It's a big, long self-negotiation. What I said earlier on, me and my client against their demotivated side in a game of chess. That's what it feels like, because if you say never again, maybe that makes you eat it all. If you say I'll have one next Sunday, you might be fine. You know what I mean? Like, it's trying to find what that level is for you. But like I say, this is why there's so many barriers, because it is tangled into other stuff. What if all my friends come out on Thursday and we all drink? Well, now it's a social event. It's not just about me. And again, it's trying to disconnect from these the best that we can. My idea with all bad behaviors is that you're choosing to do it. That's the key for me. Are you choosing to do it? So if I got drunk every Saturday night for the last 10 years, that's 500 Saturday nights I've been drinking. There is no way you are choosing next Saturday whether you want to drink. Your brain says, it's Saturday night, go get me a drink, because you've done so many repetitions. Now, the great thing in your favor is it doesn't take that many. If you've done 500 getting drunk Saturday night, if you can go, say, 4, 5, 6, that's enough to significantly reduce the connection and desire. So maybe you are able to choose. Now, of course, it might take you 4 Saturday nights to learn how to do it, not on your own. And of course, that takes willpower. But the idea is you do a trade-off with people, and it's worth it. You could say, I know you only drink once a week, but this week I want you to drink Friday night and Sunday night, but Saturday night I need you to do nothing to drink. And that would be a good enough deal for me, because even though you're drinking twice as much than normal, the fact that you have to sit through that connection the first couple of times, it's not hard, it's awkward. It's a bit you just feel awkward, you know what I'm saying? And then, of course, that would be on your own. And then, of course, it could be different that you need to learn not to drink around other people. The point is, you can get there even after hundreds of repetitions of doing something. It doesn't take that much to bring you back down to choosing. Remember, the idea is choosing, not you have to ban it again. So that's my goal with all bad behaviors. Are you choosing to do it? And when somebody is able to choose, and of course, to be able to choose, you have to do a period of not choosing. I find that's enough. That's enough to get the balance, the moderation that everybody's looking for. But if you're not choosing in 5 out of 10 of the situations, it's harder to be moderate, because the body and the situation is making me do that behavior where you now need huge amounts of willpower, and that's just not going to work long term.
Yeah, gotcha. Cool, man. So it'd be cool to like pivot to the book a little bit more. I understand in the book there's a couple of different plans, and they're quite flexible, and people can tailor make their own plans from looking at the information in the book. So how does that element of the book? How can someone use the book to empower themselves with these plans and information?
Yeah, I think the idea of the book was to give somebody an example of what. Because most people talk about mindset, motivation, and then they just do the old classic plan, try hard to get there kind of thing. It's like, no, what if the task this week was to do an exercise around motivation, which you touched on at the beginning of the podcast? What if it was for me for 5 minutes a day to sit there and just close my eyes and think about what are the consequences if I don't make a change today? And people think that's stupid. They're like, no, I should be on a treadmill sweating or something. You're like, no, because let's understand you probably know what to do to lose body fat. Even if you don't know what to do, I could just guess and say, just eat everything you're eating, just have a 20% less, and that'll probably be enough. You know, like it can be that simple. But it's sometimes you need that motivation. So the point of the plan is you take some of these techniques that we talked about today and says, do them. So the goal for that week would be, as I say, think about the consequences of results. Goal for next week might be try not to eat in the morning so early. And then you're like, okay, but I have to eat at 7 a.m. I might die. And I'm like, wait till 7:15, see what happens. You're like, I didn't die, I was wrong. You know, it's trying to rechange some of those natural patterns, natural thought, or not having those thought processes so that you can do it. Another task might be, why don't you go and join an exercise class? You're like, an exercise? No way, I hate exercise class. I'm not exercising. You're like, get around other people. You know what I mean? It's like, find the class that's least scary. Phone up your friend who's fit so they can take you. It's doing things you wouldn't necessarily think of, but the point you don't think of it is because most plans are just plan, nutrition, exercise. What do I do? What do I do? Not what do I need to do to change who I am more fundamentally. Because the analogy I always take was, if I was betting on someone, same thing for yourself. So you get a client in front of you, you've got to bet on the odds on them being in shape in 5 years. What information are you going to use to make that bet? So you're going to have to look at some facts. I'm going to go, okay, let me think. What's the longest you've been without eating? Like 2.5 hours. I'm like, okay, that's not great. You know what I'm saying? Because, you know, if you're going to eat every 2.5 hours for the next 5 years, maybe at some point those snacks become a lot. What's your, you know, like around exercise? I've never exercised. You know, those two scenarios, I'm not going to put huge odds on them. But the next person I might meet might be, you know, well, I exercise every day. I'm like, well, that sounds good. And then like, what's he drinking? Well, I get drunk every night. I take drugs. You know, it's like you're betting on behavior. So the point is, with their process on the book in the program, they work with me. At the end of it, some of those things should change. So if I've taught them to be quite comfortable not eating in the evening, I'm like, well, that's brilliant. And if I taught them to choose around bad behaviors, like, that's brilliant. I choose them to enjoy exercise on their own, exercise in a group. You know, these are the kind of data that I could put a better bet on them. If they got no awareness what's in food, that's not a good sign, because you're eating what you're eating on taste. You don't know what's in food. So, you know, if you get that knowledge part, so that's, again, that's a bit of education. So that's the process that I'm looking for. On the book programs, I try to teach you or show you what some of those programs look like, so that by the end of it, if I was going to do a percentage, and like I say, with my clients, I've got an analysis based on the book that you take, and I can see the scores of the different areas, and we can say, look, your main issue is stress. You know how to get in shape. You know what I mean? You know what's in food. You know what to eat. You know how to move. It's all stress. So then what do we do week 1 or 2? Well, we just start with stress. You know, like, why start with, and all, you know, so that's the idea. So I have an analysis I use with clients for that. So that's what the book's basically about, if that answers the question roughly.
Yeah, no, that's great, mate. That's great. And you know, there's a lot of books out there in terms of the health and fitness world, and also in terms of weight loss. Why should someone pick this book, your book, over the Grand Unified Theory of Weight Loss over other books? What makes this one different, bud?
Well, this pulls together all the areas that you need to get in shape, but people just don't talk about. Because almost every health and fitness book is either on nutrition or the exercise side of things, and you know that it's, can I stick to it? You know, almost everybody who's watching this has probably lost body fat before, done a great program where they got great results. It's like, you could probably use that program. It's the structure of having something around you that changes it. So my book is going to give you, and I'll give you insights to the reasons why you've been struggling and how to solve it. So you'll see patterns in the book and you'll be like, oh yeah, that's me. Oh, that's me. Oh, that's what I need to do. Because what most people do, they see the pattern, but then they don't do it. You know, so you work with a lot of stress, management. They want to lose shape, get in shape, and they know stress stops them. Well, maybe giving you a ring would be the obvious next step, but people don't do that. What people do is they go, oh, I've seen this new keto diet, my friend lost weight, let me try this. They can see the problem, but they're doing the wrong solution, and it's trying to make them, and this book is going to bring that attention to it so that you can see what's what. And again, if you've got huge dreams that you don't believe is possible, a massive transformation, then it's definitely necessary as a book, because you're going to have to go through the process. You can't make a dramatic transformation without things behind the health and fitness plan. And if you look at like a lot of the best internet transformations, somebody who's whatever 200 kilos down to 80 kilos, they start off very different to how they finish. You'll see the end video on Instagram where they're pumping weights, cycling twice a day like a machine. day one, they were probably just walking, just walking and having a little bit less each meal. Then they met a trainer who's helped them for a year and a half. Then they were joining exercise. Like it's a real journey with different stages to get there. So, and this is obviously setting out that whole roadmap of what and how to go through the process.
Amazing, mate. Amazing. Oh, right. We're going to come to the last question. What you're just saying about transformation is like a really nice lead into that, and it's a question I actually ask each guest that comes on, and yeah, it's all about Phoenix Vision. This podcast is all about creating a transformative vision of health for its listeners. So I'd love to ask you, what does transformation mean to you, and what would you like to transform in the future?
Well, it's a great thing. Transformation for me is, again, I'm always into personal choice. So it's not about me, you need to do this, you need to do that, but it's about longevity. So a desire to become something new, and I'll stay there naturally. That's the key for me, naturally staying there, not there for 2 months, or I'm there, but I'm having to count calories for the rest of my life. Like, that's not transformation. Transformation is I'm there, I enjoy being there, I do all the tasks I need to enjoy it. That's a proper transformation around that sort of thing. As far as myself is transformating, I just want to help people transform. The more people, the better. Not just only people I work with, but also some, work with personal trainers, so that we can train more people together. So that I don't think there's so many well-intentioned trainers, and there's a lot of trainers who are not so well educated, and they dominate the adverts on Facebook and Instagram. Buy this, belly fat loss work, all this stuff, because it sells. But obviously, the more people we genuinely help, the better. And like I say, I think that's always a test for me. If I have a new client in front of me and I'm not inspired, then that's probably the day I'll quit. But even now, I'm always inspired to help make that change. So that's the idea, is obviously changing many people that I come in contact, help trainers be able to change more people getting with their clients. And that'd be a good mark to leave on the world,
Legendary. And yeah, man, I can really attest to your work, having, felt the massive benefit. And like I said, this investment that I was making in myself, like I'm going to see you a few years ago. So yeah, like thank you once again for that, mate. Ben, how can people find out more about you or your books, mate?
Obviously on the internet, you can get on Amazon, The Grand Unified Theory of Weight Loss. There it is. The lighting's awful in this room. The sun went in. You can follow me on any social media. Ben Wilson UK. I'm on Instagram, Facebook, all the social medias. Follow me there, and hopefully I can be of some help in the future.
Amazing. Well, brother, it's been so good to catch up. Like, my God, yeah.
In person. Next time you're in the central London, we need to hang out or something. Go sit in a lake. Do you still do cold stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. We just bought a chest freezer for our garden, so we can literally plug it in. I got in there the other night. It was -10, and when I'd got out, it had gone up to -6 because it had basically had all my body heat from me. So yeah, very much doing the cold still, and feeling good for it.
You're ahead of the time, a pioneer. There's only a few people doing it 4 or 5 years ago, and now everyone does it. You're nobody if you don't do it now.
Yeah, right. Well, I got that video on my Facebook to prove it. I was doing it before all the cool kids were.
I used to always laugh when you like the lakes in Hackney. I just felt sorry for some poor woman walking a dog and comes around to see you sat there in a lake. All right, how you doing?
Mate, they used to love it. The dog walkers loved it, and but I stopped doing it when I was in there, like sat in this pond in Victoria Park. I looked across and there's just a massive rat that just
really
just walks on the riverbank. I'm like, oh, I need to stop getting in here. Like,
you need to get yourself a fridge, like you have.
I've upgraded, got myself a fridge freezer for the garden now instead of the pond.
Anyway, man, it's been great time. We'll have to catch up again in the future, do another one of these, and then that should be good, huh?
I'll be up for that, mate, for sure. All right, but Ben, thank you so much for your time, mate. Much love, and yeah, see you soon.
See you soon, mate. All right, cheers. Take care.
Peace.